the man who collapsed at work. The sun beat down on the construction site as Jack Thompson, a 45-year-old foreman, wiped sweat from his brow. It was another long day. Heavy lifting, drilling, hauling cement, the usual. His crew was mid-shift when it happened. One moment, Jack was giving instructions. The next, he was on the ground. Jack, can you hear me?" The workers rushed to his side. His eyes were open but distant, his breath shaky. I feel weird." His voice was slurred. "Dizzy." Then, just as suddenly as he went down, he sat up. "I'm fine," he muttered, rubbing his head. "Just got lightheaded." But his hands were shaking. And for a split second before he collapsed, he had seen something strange, a flash of bright light, like a camera going off in his brain. His co-workers didn't take any chances. An ambulance was already on the way. When Jack arrived at St. Joseph's Hospital, he expected the worst. But to his surprise, after a quick exam, the ER doctor found nothing wrong. His vitals? Stable. Blood sugar? Normal. Heart? Strong. Jack gave a relieved chuckle. "Told you I was fine." The young resident nodded. It was probably just heat exhaustion, but let's do a CT scan to be safe. Jack waved it off. "That's overkill. I probably just skipped breakfast." But just as he swung his legs off the bed, he swayed. His vision blurred for a second. His head throbbed. Dr. Alex Monroe, the attending physician, caught the hesitation. He saw the way Jack winced, the subtle way he pressed his fingers to his temple. Something wasn't adding up. Dr. Monroe frowned. "Jack, did you feel anything strange before you collapsed?" Jack hesitated. I saw a flash, like a camera flash in my head." Dr. Monroe's stomach dropped. Flashes of light, sudden dizziness, a moment of unconsciousness. These weren't just signs of exhaustion. They were signs of something far deadlier. He turned to the nurse. "I want an urgent CT scan now." The images appeared on the screen. Dr. Monroe's eyes widened. His worst fear was confirmed. There it was, a bulging balloon-like swelling in one of Jack's brain arteries. An aneurysm. A silent killer waiting to rupture. Dr. Monroe swallowed hard. Jack had been walking around with a ticking time bomb in his head. One wrong move, one spike in blood pressure, and it could burst, causing instant, catastrophic brain bleeding. And if that happened? Jack wouldn't just collapse, he wouldn't wake up. Jack smirked when the doctor walked in. "So, Doc, am I good to go?" Dr. Monroe pulled up a chair. "Jack, we found something." Jack's smirk faded. "You have an aneurysm in your brain. It hasn't ruptured yet, but if it does," he took a breath, "it could kill you instantly." The words hung in the air like a lead weight. Jack stared, disbelieving. "But I feel fine." Dr. Monroe nodded. "That's the terrifying part. Many people with brain aneurysms never know they have one, until it's too late." Jack's hands gripped the bedrail. "So what do we do?" Dr. Monroe's voice was firm. "We need to operate, immediately." Within hours, Jack was prepped for brain surgery. The neurosurgeons worked carefully, navigating the delicate web of arteries in his brain. They placed a tiny metal clip at the base of the aneurysm, cutting off blood flow before it could rupture. Every movement was precise, calculated. There was no room for error. And then, it was done. The ticking time bomb had been defused. Days later, Jack sat in his hospital bed staring out the window. The man who had walked into the hospital thinking he was fine had been seconds away from disaster. Dr. Monroe checked his chart and smiled. "You're lucky. If that aneurysm had burst, we wouldn't be having this conversation." Jack let out a shaky breath. I almost didn't come in. Dr. Monroe nodded. And that's why we're talking about this now. Hidden aneurysms are silent and lethal killers. Dr. Monroe turned. Brain aneurysms are silent killers. They can form without warning and grow for years without symptoms. But when they rupture, the survival rate is devastatingly low. He raised a finger. But there are some warning signs. Sudden, severe headaches, often called thunderclap headaches. Flashes of light, vision disturbances, dizziness. Unexplained fainting or collapse. Nausea, vomiting, or difficulty speaking. Who's at risk? People with high blood pressure or family history of aneurysms. Smokers and those with high cholesterol. Anyone who has had a head injury. What should you do? If you ever collapse, even for a second, don't ignore it. If you experience flashing lights or a sudden headache worse than anything you've ever felt, get to a hospital immediately. A simple brain scan could save your life. Dr. Monroe looked back at Jack, who was now alive because of one decision: to get checked. Jack thought he was just tired. In reality, he was standing on the edge of a cliff without knowing it. If you ever feel something off, trust your gut, because sometimes the warning signs are there, but only if you're paying attention. Always listen to your body and act fast. Save a life.